the Monona Parks and Recreation Board meeting to order. It is Wednesday, April 15th, 2026. And Jake, have you noted the roll?
I have.
And that brings us to approval of minutes, dated March 11th, 2026. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
And a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. 3, appearances. There's no one here. Is anyone online to appear on any item that is not on the agenda?
Tony and Rachel coming in.
Nope. All right. That brings us to unfinished business, which is none. New business, A, capital budget amendment, Watts Pay Station. Jake.
Okay, so this one effectively can be tabled. We have a parking pay station at Lottis to be able to handle credit card sales at the site. There's monthly service charges, and the machine has failed spectacularly over the last 3 years, resulting in...
Good morning. This is Kevin Isle over in Evansville giving you a call. Hope you're doing well.
Is that you? Me?
That's not me.
Okay. So we also have manual pay stations at Winnequa Trail and Toniwatha Trail. Those result in city staff, meaning me, putting envelopes in those stations and then emptying them on a weekly basis, taking the cash to the office, count it, that cash then gets taken to the bank. This budget amendment would be to install a kiosk that you see at the state parks, national parks, and county parks, which can dispense season passes. Although after I further reviewed the proposal, the ongoing monthly costs were, in my opinion, too much for what the volume of sales are coming in. It was over $1,000 a month just to have the software system and the datacom. And so I am withdrawing this request from this board for consideration and notifying that we are going to be going cashless this year at our launches. So there'll be a QR code that people can use their phone and use our own system that we already have that can take credit card sales. So they'll be able to do credit card sales, but it will be from a mobile device. They can still get their annual passes from a city hall or the community center. Daily cash sales though would not be allowed anymore, and I think it saves us on operating cost, staff time. It's not as convenient, I will admit, for some of our local residents, but it really is not a lot of money when we're talking about how much we're bringing in. The Lake Access Cooperative Program will be a discussion point at some point this year on whether we continue to be a partner with Dane County and City of Madison on kind of this joint use of the program.
Don't we somehow, aren't we at a disadvantage of that?
We are. So the money we collect in Monona stays in Monona. We used to offer our annual passes at the old Ace Hardware on Cottage Grove Road, West Marine, and Walmart, way back in the day. None of those three locate, well, 2 of the 3 have closed, and the others, no longer wish to participate in that kind of program of helping sell these sales. So Dane County and City of Madison have a little bit more reach, obviously, in getting returner season pass holders, some of which reside in Monona, some of which buy their season pass from Dane County or City of Madison and then use our launches all summer long. So we don't see any of that money. The expenditures to maintain our boat launches continue to increase, especially at Lottis, with the size of the parking lot, the plantings, the bathroom cleaning, etc. And so Dane County has been the leader, the driver of promoting what those annual increases are for daily and season passes, and their Parks Commission has been hesitant to raise fees to what my recommendation is, or even City of Madison. So we've been kind of going back and forth. We're all very familiar with each other from the staff level, and we all have concerns about different levels of cooperative permitting programs amongst residents in the county and what's equitable and fair to each jurisdiction. In this particular case, we can discuss it if anyone has a strong feeling on it. I'm recommending we do not move forward with this capital budget amendment proposal and either just table it for now and go through this as a quasi-pilot program this year for cashless sales and see what the result is in revenue generation. We also have to have enforcement from our PD, and it's not really a high level of enforcement capability with our police department to enforce parking violations, which are mostly on the weekends.
We can just choose not to take it out, too. And you can always reintroduce it at some other point if you wish.
Well, I do have one question. Is there any way that folks could get a day pass, rather than the season thing during the week at either Parks and Rec or?
Yes. I mean, logistically, most people are with boat when they're going, and so we would offer that as at the pool, for example, at below deck. They could pick up a daily admission slip there if they want to use cash. And we would have those advertised as well. So we do have locations that are open nights and weekends in which we can administer that for cash or check. We're trying to make it as easy as possible from your phone to put your license plate number and limited information that you have to provide other than the credit card number. And then you would just write the receipt number on an envelope that we can provide at those stations, and then our PD would get notification that that was a paid admission for that day at that particular spot.
I like that because there's some folks that are not really technologically savvy, so to have that possibility of them also having that as an option, I think will bring in more revenue. Not a lot probably, but a little bit here and there also helps.
Right.
Thanks, Jake.
Jake, I'm not recalling any type of marketing that the money that people pay stays in Monona. Could that be something that in the newsletter you could advertise that? Maybe even in our tax bill there could be a flyer in there that buy your season pass now and all that money stays within Monona.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the next step on this would be to send something out as when we get to my report about when the piers will actually get installed, which is, your guess is as good as mine at this point with weather. Ideally by the first weekend in May, is that would be part of this new promotion. It's the best case scenario is you buy your annual pass, which is a great deal at $52 or whatever it is, and we will mail it, or even better yet, we'll just drive around in our little electric vehicle and drop it off at your house, because that's what we like to do in Monona, is provide good service. We'll get it to you as soon as possible, and then that money stays in the operations and the maintenance of our Monona launches. We're still technically paying back. So we borrowed, when we did the boat launches in 2017 or 2018, I think it was, we had allocated $60,000 of daily and annual admission fees over the course of, I think, 10 years. And we're barely meeting that threshold. So the sales continue to decline because of lack of access at probably where the hot spots would be. And then annual pass holders, quote, I don't say clogging up, but utilizing kind of our priority boat launch, which is Lottis. Lottis is really the main driver as far as out of town visitor launch areas. 20 off the trail and Winnequa Trail, our Monona Resi's. So those aren't moving the needle financially. But yes, I will notice that in marketing.
And so, is it the committee's desire to just not take this up right now and have it reintroduced later, or would you like to act on it? The action would be either to table it or reject it. And we could also just not take it out.
I'd recommend
Tabling it? Is there a motion to table it?
I'll make a motion to table it.
I'll second.
And any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item is tabled. All right, moving on to capital budget amendment, Dream Park shelter repairs.
Okay, so this one, on the other hand, the Dream Park shelter is 19 years old as of this year. It has experienced a lot of challenges in the last 19 years, from maintenance and repairs and use and abuse. Over the last 6 months, we've noticed a lot of shingles coming off the roof and damage in certain areas, and so we've had several roofing contractors come out. A lot of the challenges, there's a bunch of skylights that are above the bathroom areas and main gathering areas that are leaking. The roof is just failing, which is now causing some damage to the wood above it. We also have had inoperable water fountains for the last several years on the outside of the building, so limiting us to the standalone bubbler and bottle filler. Given it's our heavily used park, we also have multiple areas of failing wood, which is resulting in bird habitat in the attic. And with this proposal amendment to replace the roof, I would be recommending that we remove the skylights that were originally supposed to offer some natural lighting into the hallway and bathroom area. And if you're familiar with the building, it's this translucent material that quite frankly looks really bad. It's got a bunch of debris and dirt and dust and bird poop all over it, and never in my opinion has really done what we had hoped it to do, with kind of getting the natural light in the main gathering area is fine, but we would remove 10 skylights and just roof it over and then put a normal bathroom ceiling material over the bathrooms and hallway. So estimated that this amount would be about $50,000 between the roof, the plumbing for drinking fountain, and the ceiling modification. It can possibly wait until next year. I think we'll suffer more water damage and the plywood that's underneath the roofing, potentially impacting user experience or more leaks in the facility. We have funding sources that is part of a next agenda item, or at least a discussion about how we would recommend allocating funding. My recommendation is that we ask the council to use capital reserves, so that is already borrowed money from projects that maybe were under budget or not completed.
What's the total, Jake?
$50,000.
So that didn't come in the email.
Yeah, correct. I did not have that out. I was still obtaining quotes as of this morning to kind of make sure we were in a number that I was confident in, and what it would cost to replace the entire roof system. And then if we're doing that, to take care of the water, the drinking fountain, because operationally I was hoping to put it in through operations budget, but we had other projects that have gobbled up a lot of our contracted service budget already. So that's not going to be an option operationally this year anyway. So that is the ask. I think long-term, as we talk about Dream Park, and I can include that in our next discussion, it relates to kind of what we do with that particular shelter and how we add to our Central Park, and whether or not that shelter continues to serve the best use of the community and our visitors.
So that's it. The will of the committee. Is there a motion?
So, if we didn't ask the city to use capital reserve, then it would wait till next year's budget out of park, is what we would approach it that way?
We have some outstanding money in our parkland dedication fees. That is money that has been paid into the city from the developers of apartment complexes.
What's that balance right now, do you know?
This is not, you guys can't see it online, right? You're not seeing that,
No, we
okay?
cannot.
No.
Because it has some other stuff in here that I don't want quite public. We have spent 19,000 on soil borings for a cold storage building, 15,000 for a gangway, 40,000 is allocated for a Huska as part of this year's. We have $550,000, and so about 100,000 of that has been allocated. I'm going to modify the sheet and share it. Hold on 1 second, and so you guys can see it. Okay, so this spreadsheet has the names of the developments, the number of units, and the price per unit. And so that's what we have in hand right now. I have estimated some future developments that are at various stages in the city process and what that could potentially mean. On the right-hand side, I have projects that I've kind of pegged as potential as part of our capital improvement program, and whether or not we want to use that money on maintenance and safety related items, or if we want to use it on tangible projects that impact the community.
I'm sorry, the ones that are in process or potential, wait, they're under the old fee?
No,
not the new fee?
They're all under the new fee.
They're all under the new fee.
The last one
Is that
River Place Phase 1 got through on the old.
Okay,
The
and
14.
it's 3,500 a unit now, right?
3,000.
3,000
adjusted
Okay.
for inflation each year. So that's where that number comes from, and we can kind of talk through, I guess, what that looks like. So this could be an alternate funding source. I'm not recommending it because I am probably advocating that our parkland dedication fees that we're getting for new residents is put back into amenities in the park system that can support our new resident base and also our existing residents. And some of the things that we could potentially funding are just maintenance related items that I think should just be part of our general tax obligations. So we've got playgrounds to replace, we've got paths to potentially put in, we've got basketball courts that can be updated, we've got athletic fields that can be updated, pickleball or tennis courts that could be used for this money. And this year's budget, capital budget, included basically all of the projects which were minimal to be funded through parkland dedication. And so I don't necessarily want to see that as a trend, but I do want to get your thoughts on that, because this is just an initial list, and as we kind of talk about the regular capital budget, you'll see kind of why I'm advocating this.
Okay.
Yes, a few questions. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You go first. Yeah, please.
Okay. So those were my thoughts to Jake as you're talking about that. I hate to use park dedication money for repairs. And with things coming up in the future, a new park potential with near Top Golf, other things that we have to enhance the parks that we already do have that aren't repairs. So I would definitely lean in that direction. On the other hand, this is such an active park, and that gets used a lot throughout the summer, and it seems like letting it get worse might cost us more in the long run.
Yeah.
Too. So what other ways would there be besides using that capital reserve?
Well, I mean, it's money that has already been borrowed for other projects that what's called reserves. So
Okay.
we do have money that potentially could be available for this.
Okay, that's separate from
That's
the
separate
park
from our
dedication.
park, correct.
Okay.
And so I think that would be ideally, in my recommendation, the first ask, and then it's up to the council to decide if they want to use that source of funding or kick it back to us and say, listen, we don't want to use that. Would you guys say yes to parkland dedication fees for this particular project?
Then another question with that shelter, how much revenue does it bring in?
I'll have to get back to you on that. So overall, all of our park shelters that we rent out comes out to about $40,000 a year. That's into the general fund, so that is used to help support all city operations, including parks. At Winnequa Park, the ROI on that one is more challenging. It's still like our most popular shelter,
Yeah.
but there's also multiple events and just general public use of the park that puts wear and tear on
Yeah.
the bathrooms, etc. So, you know, we've talked about that, about what our level of how we can support the demand and the use and kind of the maintenance and wear and tear on some of the shelters, especially Dream Park. And it can be very challenging to say, I'm going to give you a really clean shelter, because I might have 1,000 people just rambling through there on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And, you know, after hours it gets trashed, and then, you know, whatever we did in the morning, that work is for naught. So, you know, and we charge a lot. Our rental fees are expensive, there's no doubt about that, but in the kind of the grand scheme of our revenue collection overall, I don't want to say it's a loss leader, because we do provide a valuable service and a dedicated space for people that want to have their events. It just can be challenging to maybe uphold a level of expectation from
Yeah.
what renters might have and what I have even too for the building. And that one is particularly challenging to maintain, just because of scope and angles and constant. Something's wrong with it constantly.
There's been always something.
Yes, yes.
Over time.
But I
It's
do
one-
think we should invest. I mean, saying that, I do think we should invest in these repairs, and if we can do it this year, that would be great. If it, you know, we have to wing it and wait till next year, you know, I'm okay with that, but it's not going to get any better.
Is the water turned on over there?
Yeah.
now? And is it in all the parks right
Yep,
now?
all but I think Oneida is the last one to get turned on. I think everything else is up.
Hey Jake, it's Aaron here. Is there a plan to upgrade the bubbler or water fountain to have water bottle dispenser at
Yeah, so
that shelter?
the tricky part, so we do have a water bottle dispenser over by the bike rack. It's a standalone unit. It's just the way that the plumbing is, it's like buried in walls. And so trying to like reroute piping means we're gonna either have to expose it on the outside of the building or like on the interior of one of the bathrooms. Neither are great options. But you gotta work with like ADA and be able to, like, the space there is really tight. And so we've been kind of working with our plumbing contractors about, well, does this, you know, do we maybe have to look at a different spot, you know, for this, because it's like right in between a doorway and a family bathroom, and but that's where a drain pipe, you know, it's like it gets a little more complicated. But ideally, we can try to get something that fits inside that can both serve as a drinking fountain and a water bottle filler on the building itself. It needs it. We need more water access there, you know, I think overall.
Yeah, you got big parties, and I know I've rented the shelter. It's one of my favorite. It's in the heart of Monona.
Yeah.
I think the visibility and just the expectation from residents is that, you know, it's maintained, and I hear it's hard, and I hear there's some restrictions. I'm all for if we can find the funds or allocate them to make the improvements, just because I think it is such an important shelter for Monona and just attracts a lot of people, and it really does showcase the parks. So.
And I'm in agreement with that, because that to me, for our family, is pardon me, one of the best parks in Monona. We use it a lot. I know you have a lot of events that go on there. I think it kind of sets the standard for the rest of Monona when it's up and running and looks great, and people come here, they buy food here, they stay with their families, hang out at Monona. I'm on a couple of sites. One is Madison Family Site, and this Dream Park was listed as the first site to come out of everywhere in the Madison area to bring your kids. So I really really think improving this and making it look spectacular will look good for us and bring folks into the community that will spend food at Salvatore, spend money at Salvatore's and all the other wonderful restaurants we have here. So
Is that a motion?
yes, I motion to accept that.
Aaron, is that a second?
I second that.
All right, any further discussion?
Sorry.
That's great. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the motion, just so everyone's aware, is to recommend a budget amendment using capital reserves to make improvements at the Dream Park shelter, including a new roof and operating a drinking fountain on the building and ceiling modifications.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
All right, so that brings us to capital budget discussion.
Okay, so next month we're gonna do our bike tour. At least one, maybe two. So all you guys online, we're gonna find a time, and I don't care if it's at 8 o'clock at night. I'll, take a bubbler, and we're gonna roll around this town for as long as it takes to look at some of our projects and potential project sites. So here's what we've got. Originally, we talked about one of our priorities being needing some storage space, and so former Mayor O'Connor allocated all of the parkland dedication fees for the construction of this storage building off-site. As we went through the process of looking at whether Ahuska Park would be a good site, which it wasn't, and spent money to do soil borings and looked at the dog park site, we received a proposal for design services which were $83,000. So we're about $20,000, or let's say $18,000 in of that parkland dedication. We're about $83,000 to do a design of a storage facility because of the size and scope of it. On that site would include stormwater management. The estimated cost has increased from $500,000 to almost $1 million for a similar type of building to be able to store equipment, supplies, etc. That's a big number. It's a huge number when we're talking about some uncertainties with other parts of the city and the department. So I'm not proposing we move forward with that project yet until we have some conclusion about what may or may not happen with the sale of Maywood. The dollar amount that we would still need tax levy support for that building, and we have future projects coming down the pipeline too. And so I want to kind of task this committee with thinking about, when we talk about what our true priorities are in the system, we've got a lot of questions, and I'm just going to rattle them off right now, and we're going to talk about those through our tour, and we're going to start to look at priorities. And this is not in any order of significance necessarily in my head, but just what's come recently. The future of the Green Park Playground at Winnequa Park. Do we shelf it? Do we put an end of life? Do we look at fundraising for a new playground? Do we augment to what we have and extend the life of this existing playground? Do we complete a master plan for Winnequa Park and look at what the best improvements to the rest of the park are from what we've already done? We have an outstanding capital project of the remodel of the Schaefer shelter. That has not been bid out yet due to staff time. If that comes in over what we have previously allocated, do we use some of that funding for that to improve that site? Do we make improvements at Schluter Park in an effort to continue to have events, aka beer gardens there? That would look at stage near the water, better lighting, better seating area, better area to serve food and bev. Do we make augmentations to Grand Crossing Park in which to facilitate more attendance at events and others? I think we can all agree agree, if we've been down there in the middle of summer, shade is a big issue. Probably like uncomfortable being out in that park without any sort of covered shade. The rink, you know, there's an option that we could put money into the rink to make it all the pipes embedded in concrete and get rid of that green space, and then have roller skating in the summertime, for example. That is a potential future revenue production and would decrease the amount of time it takes to put together the rink in the wintertime and take it down. Do we make improvements to our athletic facilities and make sure that they're more playable? Right now is a really great time to say, you know, if you have a turf facility, for example, baseball field or soccer field, you're playing today. If you're on natural grass, you're not. We're canceled. And we are wet. When do we start the conversation about a new pool or changes to the pool and a feasibility study? Do we entertain the purchase of Maywood School or taking on ownership and putting investments into that facility in Maywood Park and supporting not only consumer demand for out-of-school time programming, but also how do we expand options for public use, community use of that type of space long term. I can keep going, but these are the questions that I am putting through my head on a daily basis, and there's some pretty big dominoes that would fall. Let alone was hoping to have it appear before this committee, but you can follow along with Plan Commission and CBA the development of the proposed development around Topgolf and WPS, which would include a public park. Right now we're up to close to an acre and a half of public space that would be dedicated to the city that needs to be planned and designed and potentially programmed. And where does that fit into what this department can do? We received last month we heard from the Monona Farmers Market on facility use agreement for 1 year. There's been discussions about the challenges of maintaining that as a nonprofitly run program in the city. You know, how do programming events fall under our jurisdiction or under a new organization? How does this department fit in overall with our other nonprofit groups in Monona, aka Friends of San Damiano, all the Leopold Nature Center, the Mesba Community Discover Monona as a tourist destination? How do we promote? Where's our priorities on what we want to fix? We spent a lot of time and money in the last decade making improvements to our lakeshore parks. And so when we look at Schluter and Stonebridge and Wildhaven, Arrowhead, along that kind of path, we have seen in the last couple of budgets the amount of funding available for park improvements is not a lot. The demands of the overall city, public safety, equipment, roads, all are competing for the same tax dollar. And so part of what I'm asking us as a group, and hopefully with some leadership from me and a good recommendation, is what kind of path can we present for the next 5 to 10 years, and what do we want Monona to look like, and where is our priority going to be? Because there's a lot of priorities that I see, and I can probably be convinced right now to go several different angles. And one big decision could impact everything else that may or may not get done. And so I think it's this committee and board, I'm going to really ask over the next couple months that you spend as much time in our park systems as possible in your free time, that you spend as much time gathering input from friends and neighbors, and maybe start asking some of those tough questions. What are we willing to do without? What are we willing to wait? Is there some sentiment? And this will be some surveying that we've done too. We still have to finish an update to our Parks and Open Space Plan, which expires at the end of this year. So that's kind of our guiding document. but always in between those plans, a lot of stuff comes up. You know, there's 3 major things that have come up in the last, 2 years of this, and where do we go? Do we, where's the public demand? What are they willing to support financially with tax dollars? What is our opportunities for revenue generation? And how do we set the table for the next generation of Monona from a Parks and Rec setting? So I had a very nice conversation with Pat yesterday. We talked through a lot of this, and I said, I don't know if I've ever had a time in my career here where I've had more questions about things than answers. And if I'm questioning things, then I think the general public too, and probably you guys. So if it feels like a lot and you're like, holy crap, yeah, it's right to feel that way. And so I think now more than ever, I'm asking everyone in this room and on this committee for like really honest feedback, whether it's offline or during meetings, or like, opinions about where we should be on certain things, because we're going to have to come with I can't come with $50 million of ask in the next 3 years. New pool, new rec center, paths, pedestrian paths throughout, our main Central Park, and expect to get any sort of a response other than no. And so I think we need to look at strategically what is most important, and then kind of what may or may not make the chop list. And so that is, we have been tasked putting a 10-year capital budget together that we are talking about with department heads and the elected officials. I have at least a first draft completed, and when you look at kind of existing master plans, potential future park spaces, potential new facility, and what that all cost, it's like, in my opinion, it's not financially realistic right now, the way it's laid out over 10 years. But I also feel that we need to maybe kind of set a vision for what we feel as a community and as a board about where we want to see improvements in the park system as we continue to see more overall development and residents into the city, as we see more traffic and more people using the Lake Loop as a tourist destination. How do we support that? And support residents' use of active spaces and program spaces. So there will be a cost to all of it. There's a staffing level component to some of these things as well. And so over the next couple months, I hope that we can kind of, at least you guys feel comfortable with a good understanding of where things are at, and from your own perspective, what projects may kind of like consistently rise to the top, or to say, maybe we need to maybe we don't need to do as many beer gardens. We have lots of concerts, or maybe we don't need to do this project, or whatever it may be. And none of that will hurt my feelings, just FYI. So, I think what we've always been able to do as a department, as a committee, is respond to where the community demand is. But we also have to have, I think, a leadership role as kind of the resident subject matter experts and people that are in this and, volunteering, is to say, this is also our, this is what we're presenting out here. And for our elected officials and for our communities to talk about it and debate it and decide, what path forward we want to move.
Hey Jake, you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to say this, and I know it's our role to really do this, but do individual boards within the city ever hold issue-specific public listening sessions where we would have a chance to hear what the public? And I know this could be opening Pandora's box and be out of control, but.
I mean, we typically have had those right for individual projects. I think is kind of this. I think there's probably an opportunity to do as it potentially relates to an offer of whether or not the city would purchase New right? So from my point of view, we are in a lease agreement with the school district regarding that building. If there becomes a motion from the board to engage in negotiations with the city as a sole person, I think that would be a great time to maybe talk through as a community open house about all the options that are on the table. We can do that anyway, but like this is the big domino in my thought process right now. You know, are we looking at that as an option? Would we take on all the costs that goes with that building? Would we look at what a potential future renovation and public use of that building would look like? So I don't disagree. I think it's a great idea. I'm just not sure where it's going to fit in depending on timing with everything else. But certainly we can do that through, you know, community survey, just kind of temperature. But I do want to have it with some back understanding, because sometimes we don't always get the full picture, right? Like, well, parks dominates the capital budget. That's just not true. But it may seem like it's true, but it's like, what about this? What about that? You know, well, yeah, let's talk about that. Is 10 years too long to worry about, you know, planning and putting a plan together for a new aquatic center or a pool? You know, is it too short? Should we be pushing that out 20 years and squeezing every last, you know, inch in life out of this existing pool? Should we be looking at establishing the Parks Foundation that can help raise significant financial money? Is there bandwidth in the community to do that? Should, you know, tax dollars cover what percentage of improvements to existing parks? So I think those are all good discussion points to have in the community. So I'm definitely open to it. I just think we've got to have more information, because there's still like
A lot of
some
unknowns.
things are a lot are depending, right? And I think at some point, you know, the council will ask for a recommendation from this committee on some of those big questions. And so I want us to be prepared to at least have that discussion. And you're right, maybe we do need to gather more community input, but it's still a little early yet, I think, as it relates to potential Maywood sale.
Okay.
And it's unfortunate right now that Maywood's kind of in this mix of having to decide, because it wasn't last year, you know. So for me, my family, my group of social folks, like Maywood is a huge part of our lives, with the after school, the summer camps, so many possibilities for hiring the youth here. I mean, I can't imagine us not having that, and I also know how much it costs to you know, get that up to running in a good manner. I know it's not great, and the HVAC is not great, like so many issues. I get that. And so to me, that's the sad piece, because wow, do we want to lose that building? I don't personally. I think it's a great option for Parks and Rec, and I think you could do a lot of things with that. And I also know the cost that that's going to entail in purchasing and fixing and all of the things. So last year that wasn't even on the table. So now this year we have that along with all of these other things. So I get you, Jake. Like, what do you choose? What do you pick? Like, they're all really, in my opinion, really important. So it'll do some pondering.
Yep.
Well, and, you know, Jake, we have done surveys in the past, and so maybe a starting point would be to be able to get that information back out to us. You know, for myself, one of the concerns is that we are always at the edge of something breaking down. You know, if the pool breaks down, we don't want to be scrambling to then say, well, we're going to look at it. You know, it's almost, I think I agree with you that we need to be putting things in place so that we can say, well, this is our priority. This is what we want. The Dream Park, we've been talking about that. And do we do something to it because it's falling apart because of it being wood? But that's going to cost a lot of money if we do something there. So the survey certainly is going to be helpful, but I think we too need to come up with what we have as some of the priorities.
And that's true, because, you know, in addition to the parks, and this influences it when you think of it more broadly, the public safety building, and then you have the senior center / community center, So all of those things come into play, and it's all going to be expensive, and there's no way I can see us doing all of it, you know?
Right. Yeah, in the context of a greater city budget, what our debt capacity is, what our working debt within these development projects, and then what our city infrastructure looks like. So, you know, some of this gets addressed for community participation in this comprehensive plan, but it's not going to be all inclusive as it relates to kind of this campus plan / park. So part of pool and this building could be contingent upon what happens with the public safety building, as far as like layout, access, etc. And so I think there's a lot of discussion points and kind of like talking through things. And at some point, maybe it is from this committee, it's like, well, with all the available information we have, this is what we're throwing out there. And then the alders and the mayor and the community can say, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Or actually, let's lead around that. Because we do have to make decisions. Like I've tasked both Alder DePula and Kugel and the mayor, and I've been somewhat passionate about, like, put yourself on a deadline. Like, we do have to make decisions as a city on some of this stuff and move forward one direction or the other, because so much of it impacts then what happens after that. And, you know, we can spend, it's not going to be perfect, and there's always going to be things that come up along the way, but like as staff and as kind of like leaders of the city, we want to be able to start to have some sort of answers for people, instead of like, well, we won't know until this happens, and we don't know when that's going to happen. And I don't like being in that position. I'd rather be more proactive and saying, you know, at least this is my recommendation for a plan moving forward. These are clearly priorities for our residents and for economic development and for tourism and for visitors and for the next generation of people living here. And this is a path forward. And, you know, I hope we can look at something, but we're kind of stuck in this, like, we got a lot of stuff that needs to get fixed, or we need to just not do it, or we need to reduce service, or if that's not an acceptable, like, reduction of service for our residents and our taxpayers, then we have to figure out how to fund it and how to maintain it. And so, as what we do from parks, at least over the next 2 months, is really, this is the time I'm putting all this stuff together for you guys, to go through the process of the budget process. And so, as much public participation and feedback between now and then is great. And I'm hoping that we can at least, by next month, I would assume that we might have something to at least look at conceptually on this proposed new public space. I am recommending that as one of our stops, whether we drive out there, meet out there, we can kind of take a look at a space. If you've seen Broadway, starting to shape up pretty, a little more defined now with the poles in the building for Topgolf, so we can kind of show where this potential space would look like and kind of the scope, and some ideas that, of course, I have already got, that I'd like to share with you in person. And then we can go through maybe some of these other park areas and see. So that's what the next couple months is going to look like. And those are at least just a skimming of projects. And that doesn't even touch equipment replacement, mowers, trucks, you know, just kind of nuts and bolts of how we maintain the park system and how we move staffing in and around the city. So that all comes up to a lot. And so it's important that we kind of look at all of that and maybe, you know, set a goal for ourselves too, that we don't necessarily have all the questions answered, but we're hoping to tackle maybe a couple of the big ones.
Okay.
Hey, Jake, it's Aaron. I just want to say thanks for facilitating this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot to cover and to think about, and as a call to action, I hear you, and what I can do and what I can control is definitely get a pulse on gathering feedback and spending time in the parks, like you said, to hopefully add to the conversation as we whittle down the priorities and deal with what is to come ahead. So I appreciate you teeing it up for our group.
Awesome. Does anybody else have anything?
I do. Just a question. So I think it would be a really great idea, like Rachel said, just to get a bit of a climate survey from the folks that live here in Monona. Is there any way that in your Monona Parks and Rec newsletter you could put out what are the things that you are looking to improve and list these things with, like, this would be the goal for this park. This would be the goal for this park. Because yes, we have us, and also it's just us. And I think getting more of a climate survey from the folks that live here and the folks that are invested in Parks and Rec that actually get that newsletter and pay attention and provide feedback might be really beneficial to give us something to look at next meeting, if we could get something like that out.
Doing like a survey with survey money.
Yeah, I have one lined up.
Okay.
Again,
It'd be nice to rank those priorities.
it's centered around the decision regarding Maywood. Is like there's a fair amount of questions that I have teed up to kind of gauge, but I'm not prepared to. I'm not at least advocating we put anything out until we get something formalized from the school district.
Right.
No.
And so, I don't really want to jump that cart yet, and I don't know when that's going to happen.
No, but I'm
So-
saying, like, let's give them options of, would you like to look into improvements at Winnequa, Schaefer, Schluter? Like, give them the park preferences, and then give them just a little snippet of what we're looking at, just as a gauge. Nothing's on the docket, just kind of wondering what folks are thinking, kind of.
Yeah, I'll put that on. I'll have a draft for next month, and so I'll have that available before the meeting for review, and then we can kind of say yay or nay or switch it up, and then we can get that out in mid-May, and kind of that be like our summer, a 1 month or 2 month kind of advocating, throughout the community to fill that out. But I do have one draft already, but I hear you, and I think I need to tweak it up a little bit.
Yeah, not just focusing on Maywood, but all of these other things as well, just to see what folks are really looking, forward to for our Parks and Rec department. I think it would be nice to hear from the folks that are out there. I mean, I do talk to a lot of people as well, but it's my own circle of friends. So
Right. Our circle of friends and family and neighbors is different, and depending on where we're at in our life cycle of living in Monona. Everyone's at a different spot, and their priorities and demands change, and so I think that's it's good to have. I kind of like looking at it as a pie of, like, if you were to have $100, how would you spend it?
Yes.
If you've seen those little things where it's like, how would you put together your all-star team? Are you going to put Derek Jeter and then a bunch of average people together on a team, or this is how you could spend your $100? 50
Right.
of it would be the pool, and
Yeah.
25 would be this, or
Yes.
split it up evenly over 7 or 8 projects, and kind of do that as it relates to where we're at from a funding cycle too. Because I think, of course, yes, we all want a new pool, we all want nice paved paths through the city, we want safe pedestrian spaces, we'd like to have a rec center or someplace to go to exercise and have multi-generational programming and all that. It's just a matter of what we can afford, or what we're willing to afford and willing to pay for above and beyond what we're already paying to live here. And also kind of uncertain state allocation of funding as well. I think there's some of this where we've had this discussion a lot about, at some point property tax reform will become a priority issue for our state legislator. And I don't, I also don't want to just say, well, it's never going to change, and so we can't ever advocate for something greater than what we have now, because the future is unknown, right? And maybe it does change, and all of a sudden there is more money being allocated to schools and communities, and that we can start to dream a little bit more about how to make improvements for our communities. That's not all on the backs of our
for sure. I mean, if we could fully fund schools, then there'd be more in the budget available for municipalities.
Correct.
But we don't.
Yeah, current.
Yeah, current.
Now, in 2-3 years, maybe that changes, and
It would be good to get a pulse on, where people would stack rank the list, and even just to get them thinking about how much there is to do and how many of these capital projects there are. It might just be one of the options is just maintain what we have, and that might be the number one priority for the polling group, right? Which might open up the door later on for more creative ideas of how we fund bigger projects. I know the Miracle League has a big park project in Cottage Grove right now, and they've kind of started an aggressive campaign for funding from all sorts of nonprofits and private enterprises to get that going. So, but I'm sure the road to get to that point took a lot more. So.
right.
And I think Ron Dane was involved in that too.
Yeah.
So that doesn't hurt.
Jake, as you're pulling information together for us, if you could also provide numbers for us, as we had our earlier conversation about the park shelter.
Yeah.
If we're talking the park shelter, Winnequa Park, you have the Fall Festival, you have the 4th of July, so it's used. You have the Dream Park there, so it's used a lot,
Right.
versus Fireman's Park or Oneida Park. I mean, if it was the same, if we had to prioritize,
Right.
I think this shelter would be the priority. And
Yeah.
Maywood School, how many kids are utilizing it for the programming? So those numbers would be
Do
helpful.
we need all the shelters? I mean, I don't mean, you know what I mean? I don't want to say that.
Well,
but
I mean, they're all newer
Yes.
now, so I think that's. I think that there's always like, what does our population trend look like?
Mhm.
We talked about that too,
Yeah.
right? Like, does this number of kids keep going up? Does it plateau off? Does it eventually decline because of lack of single-family home inventory? Does our
Yeah,
community
that's-
dynamics change in which, we certainly have seen a change in transportation habits, right? Way more people are riding e-bikes and electric scooters and whatever else I see around town now. And that the size changes. I can't put normal bike racks in anymore. I need more space. These things are huge. They've got trailers, and our paths probably need to be wider because I got kids on little mopeds and one wheels, and everyone's zipping around, and they can get places faster, so they can get from park to park faster. Do we see that demand change? Do we see pickleball? Does that rise up to, hey, it's here to stay, and we need dedicated courts. We need to support our aging population more. We talk a lot about kids and families, but we are still dominated in this community by people 60 plus, living here. That's just a fact. And so, are we supporting their needs in this community and access? If you've seen some of our social media posts lately about the pool, probably the most fun attraction we get is for our Aqua Zumba instructor, Miss Ari,
yes.
who's a rock star, and she brings in lots of people of all ages, but it's maybe on the 55 plus age
Oh,
group.
it is. Ari's awesome, and yes, I have to compete with the people that are older than me, which is amazing. I love it.
So, we ask that. That's the most important thing in their world living here, is that they have access to that pool and access to that program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's really good. I do think we need more data, and we need more and then also like bandwidth. So those are kind of the big table discussions, and a little where I've been hesitant on what I want to officially propose or prepare for this review process, because there's so much that's contingent, and also I think we need to kind of take all those things into consideration and decide where we want to kind of spend our resources and our advocating efforts to the mayor and council.
I'm going to throw one thing out for consideration with everything that's coming up, the challenges and opportunities that the board has to play a role in that. I'm wondering what works best for the board and all the members too. It's a bit of a challenge to really have good, meaningful communication when some are virtual and some are present, and lives are different with work and families and different things. So just to see what works best to develop the strongest board possible in terms of everybody having a great opportunity to bring their expertise and their sphere of connections in different ways in the community to the table. So anyway, just something that maybe we could talk about and see what works best.
I like that idea. You know, I thought about the call to action, and with some of these night markets and other events going on, you know, how I could do more. And, you know, if deemed permissible, you know, I could sit at the park and rec table and just hand out information and be, you know, engage the community on whatever they'd like to talk about as it relates to park advocacy. So I'm open to that.
I love that idea.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Jake will be sitting there right with you.
No, see, the thing is, people don't always like to talk to me, they like to argue with me.
You'll have to give me some notes, yeah, like a fact sheet, and yeah, I'll have to get my materials
Like,
together.
there's those signs where it's like, you know, parks are essential to our life in Monona. Prove me wrong. And then you just have their name tag. You just have a statement there, and then come up and have that, or you know. My name's Aaron Emberry, and I think we should all pay $2,000 more a year so we can have a great pool. And then tell me why I'm wrong.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yes, but that's also at least people getting to know you guys as a conduit. And I say this like somewhat jokingly because, you know, I live here, I've worked here a long time, and, you know, over the years, interactions, like some people just aren't comfortable maybe because, you know, we know each other on a different level. Our kids are in class together or whatever it may be, and they may not be comfortable with that feedback. And so as board members, really that's also your role is to take that feedback from people and translate it a little bit, right? To go through your own relationship with them, or at least being able to be able to listen and to hear and kind of decipher to me. Because I may have my own bias based on who that person might be with that feedback. It's like, well, I've heard from them for 16 straight years, you know, that there's too many lights in Winnequa Park or whatever it may be. And so even though they may have a valid point, I might, you know, some of my challenges are like, well, okay, that's just our normal complainer, and we've got 90 other people who probably, you know, would vote the other way because they appreciate that. So I like that idea. I mean, we've got, as you know, we've got a lot of events scheduled starting in May, community-based events, and that's certainly, you know, attending also just as a resident and someone to enjoy and see what we do and to provide feedback. You know, if you want to serve in the capacity of a board member and feel that's, you know, I'm not going to ask or require that out of you, but I think it's a good idea. And so if you're willing to spend some time in that capacity, you know, we can facilitate that, no problem.
And that wasn't necessarily what I was throwing out there. It was just a time for the board
and
that works well.
Right, and I think we need maybe more of a general work plan meeting as well, and kind of talk through, you know, I've had this where I'm like, I don't know, I feel like I've maybe failed you guys in kind of expectations and roles as what committee members are, and, you know, whether you're, you know, how much advocate you are we policy driven, are we budgetarily, you know, are we working events, you know, are we providing feedback on that? And I'd like to be a little more, I'd like to meet individually with you, I think, and just kind of see where you guys are at, and like questions or like, hey, this wasn't really what I was thinking, and, you know, I'd like to really be part of this because I think there's certainly different facets and avenues, and a lot of the stuff we do is procedural and can be somewhat boring at times when we're talking about budgets, and, you know, or, you know, we move at such a fast clip, like there's just a lot of department like action that's already taken before it may reach you. It's just a matter of, you know, a report. And so all I know is that over the next couple of years, this board needs to be as strong as it's ever been in its ability to interpret data and to take feedback and to provide recommendations. And so I'm confident in all of you to be able to do that. I just don't know if I've given you enough background data. So we're going to do a little crash course here over the next couple months, and you know, it'll start with a tour. I really hope we will. I'm going to put together 2 options in May and have that available for you. And you know, if your families want to come with, that's great too. We can do big bike ride and you know, meet at some of these areas. I also think it's really great if you are, when you observe our park system in action at different times. You know, like it's good input to see what some of the systems look like at different times. You know, Patrick lives next to Frostwood Park, close to Frostwood Park, so he's going to see kind of what happens there at the beach. You know, Jeff sees everything that happens at Arrowhead Park, you know, on Wild David, and I see everything that happens at Winnequa Park. And, you know, so does Ginger, and Pat sees everything at Stonebridge, and you know, you guys are all in different areas of the community, and can kind of be kind of subject matter experts on, you know, activities and what people are seeing at that particular location as well. So I don't want to go too much further. It's been a lot, and I just hope that through community engagement and kind of experiences here, this will help guide us in this next capital budget cycle. And also what I anticipate is going to be some either things coming our way from the council or from other committees as far as recommendations on things, or us proactively kind of providing statements for those boards.
Good. That's pretty much a director's report, wasn't it? You have anything else?
No, yeah, I got lots of stuff. Okay, director's report is, it's now and everything in Parks and Rec. Everything that happens and what we do is happening right now and for the next 16 weeks. Currently, our pool is being prepped for paint. Weather delays is always on my mind, and you know, we're on a timeline of when this thing's got to get done and painted and filled.
How often do you have to paint it?
Every 3 to 5 years, generally every 3 years. We have a leak detection company coming in as well as this year to hopefully pinpoint where we've had a leak, and that will indicate maybe what level of repair may or may not be needed to the pool specifically. We are hiring over 200 employees in the parks and the recreation and the pool, and so that process is a lot of interviews and applications and onboarding and training at our different areas. And so Jessica Beglin, Jessica Walsh, Missy Miller, and myself all kind of have our core areas, and that's really a heavy lift on getting all of our seasonal staff. Park bathrooms have been opening up. Athletic fields have been practicing, so we've seen our Monona Grove lacrosse out in action, which has been great. We have more of our nonprofit partners, I would say, using some of our ball diamonds and soccer fields, so the activity really picks up here. Boat piers were scheduled to be installed this year, so we have a contractor that comes with a barge and places them in, of course, with the rain and the wind, I'm assuming that gets pushed to next week. All of our trees are getting delivered tomorrow for our Arbor Day celebration and park tree planting, and then in combination with the Sustainability Committee for the private tree purchase program. Earth Day is Wednesday the 22nd. We have some activities planned, but that may get pushed. Arbor Day is scheduled for Friday the 24th, which is a no school day. Weather depending, some of those may get pushed depending on, it's really wet. I mean, the ground is super saturated right now. So I think that's going to accelerate our normal spring schedule as far as mowing, and you know, we are looking for volunteer groups to help with some of our planting beds, and so some of our organized groups like Monona Swim and Dive, for example, they're going to do a Parks Volunteer Day next weekend, and I know we have our friends at San Damiano doing their cleanup day this weekend. We're working with a lot of different groups on how we promote some of our events. So our night markets, our first one is May 21st. That has 13 out of the 16 vendor spots filled already, so we're pretty excited about that. Our first beer garden, you guys, is Wednesday, May 6th. And if you are in the genre that I enjoy, which is 90s music, the Foo Foo Dolls are playing in their acoustic set. And I can tell you they're awesome. So we are gonna start like ready to go selling Salvatore's Pizza in our pizza oven, so we believe, and having a selection of fine brews. So invite you all to that. End of school coordination with our Winnebago Friends and School organizations for that school year bash. We're still not sure when the exact end of school is going to be, but we know that event is, I think, the last Friday in May. So we have a lot going on. It's very chaotic and stressful and challenging time, but I'm very grateful for the team that we have because they all put in a lot of work to like make it magic happen for once summer happens. So really looking forward to the nicer weather and drying out a little bit and seeing if we can do it. Every year is like, can we do this? Can we put on all these activities and events and get people to register and pay their hard-earned money to, you know, support these activities and programs? And our summer camp registration numbers are really good. We're still, you know, we're advertising and taking our after school for next school year, including kind of this recruitment and making sure that our youngest families with kids coming into 4K realize that there's a RAT program and it's available and all of that. So
I only wish you had a summer camp for 14-year-olds. That's my kid at the house. Yes.
This is true. With that, I would entertain any questions or comments or concerns.
I just want to say I can't believe all of the events you all do and pull them off every year. It's amazing to me. My family enjoys every single one. We go to a lot of these things. So I can't thank you enough, Jake. It's shocking that you can do all this stuff with your staff.
We have a great team, really do.
You do, yeah.
It's a very, you know, we probably could have a reality show in our department on how we communicate with each other, how we, you know, go back and forth and make it, but it all comes from a really shared values of, there's a lot of purpose in what we do, and it's important to us for what we do, and to find a lot of people from top to bottom, quite frankly, that are invested in that purpose and the vision of making this a great place to live, work, and play. And so I'm always appreciative of the team, and I think, you know, we have to kind of self-check ourselves a little bit too, and I think that comes with what other organizations are out there and available. I mean, that's morphed and changed. It used to be we were the only ones in town, and so we kind of look at that and how do we partner? Do we give things up? Do we still just provide the space? Are we, you know, the ones actually running this type of event? Do we need to do it? A lot of times it's just quicker and easier if we do it ourselves,
Yes.
actually, like than necessarily how we partner or how we hand off to another group. But we want to try to support all of our groups and agencies that want to use our facilities and support their mission and their group. So it's very active, which is great. I wouldn't have it any other way, quite frankly, is that we have so much, you know, activity and events and programs to support the community.
Hey, Jake, I know I'm always trying to get people to like and follow the social media outlets, but as a resident, I personally live for, or I should say, I really like when the NPR email comes out. I think it dropped today, that I can just scroll through and see everything that's coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
As far as that listserv, like, how do people get to on that listserv, and what opportunities can we do to promote that?
Sure. So that's a great question. I think we're up to like 5,000 email addresses that are included in that have participated in programs before, or you could be notified on the city website if you want to get that information. You can just kind of sign up.
I saw it there, but anywhere else?
No, I mean, I do think this is probably one where we can start to look at some signage in parks on like, hey, learn what's happening at this park with a QR code, and then you can kind of get on the listserv. But I feel like a lot of people like don't want to get the information, like they want to, like it's like they think we're going to spam them, and we try not to spam them with like email or like fluff type of things, but it's like, oh, I missed the registration deadline. It's like, well, yeah, because you opted out of the email notification. Why didn't I hear about that? Well, you didn't want to hear about it. And,
I know some other neighborhood associations, like people really rely on that direct source for the correct information, because some of the social media can send different messaging and even be, not duplicated, but impersonated, I should say. Like there's some neighborhood association groups out there that aren't actually that. So.
I hear you.
Speaking of parks activity, were you aware of what was going on at Huska today? The training for Madison Police Canine Dogs on all of our tennis courts with 12 police officers and 12 dogs.
Well, that's interesting.
I did hear about that.
Nobody reached out to parks or our police department or the city.
Interesting. Wow.
I thought they were training on Femrite.
Well, they must have been doing that too, because they were.
Okay, there you are.
Yep. Interesting.
Interesting. That is interesting. Yeah.
Neil just texted me.
Great.
All right. Any other questions for Jake? Seeing none. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Be tuned into your email for Park Tour.
Hey.
Thank you guys. Looking forward to the bike tour.
Yes.